Yeah, so
Oh,
this one is going to need a couple presses, but you can see it's still on. So just want to turn it on. Sometimes it takes.
Well, good evening and welcome to the November 5th regular City Council meeting. Tonight, we've got a number of items on our agenda: consent and action, a presentation, a couple presentations, and we will go through those in a efficient manner as we do. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mayor Hartke,
Here.
Vice Mayor Lopez,
Here.
Councilmember Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember McClymans,
Here.
Councilmember Wong,
Here.
Councilmember Rowe,
Here.
Councilmember Erland.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, City Clerk. Our invocation tonight will be led by Pastor Victor Hardy of the Congregational Church of the Valley, and our Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Mark Stewart. Pastor.
Let us prepare our hearts and minds for prayer. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Let us pray, dear Father, we call upon the powerful name, because there is no other name above your name. Dear Father, we thank you for this day, on the things that you are doing for each and every one of us. Let your Holy Spirit fall down upon us. Let us not forget about those who feel that they are not worthy, for only you said who is worthy, and you said all are worthy. We thank you for your grace. Let our voices be heard in this chamber, and let us not forget, as the holiday season comes upon us, that there are those whom are still sick in bed, those who do not have enough food to eat, those whom are looking for homes and are thirsty for drink. Dear Father, we thank you on this day as we look up to you, and let this chamber do what it has to do. Let them speak for all and each and every one of us. But more importantly, let us never forget who you are. And let us all say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Amen.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Council Member. Next on our agenda tonight is a scheduled public appearance, our Citizen Bond Committee update, our Citizen Bond Exploratory Committee update with Chairman Boyd Dunn. Chairman, it's good to see you again. Thank you for coming and filling us in with an update tonight.
Well, Mayor, City Council, it's my pleasure to be here. Have a lot of good news. Staff gave me a few notes to state tonight, and I probably will go beyond those notes a little bit, hopefully not too long. But as you know, the Citizen Bond Exploratory Committee with its subcommittees were formed in August. And both the committee and the subcommittees have been working diligently and very hard. Over 49 citizens that have been putting their time in, and we're making progress with your direction, obviously, in terms of coming eventually to this council and giving a report. The committee chairs and members of all the 7 subcommittees have been going through a process of education, realizing what a great city we have, the history of what we've done in the city in terms of amenities, and realizing that the future amenities are necessary, but looking at each one very, very carefully. Each subcommittee has received a financial overview from the city manager, management services director, and the budget manager. And each subcommittee has also received open meeting law training and from the city attorney and city clerk. I will say that we have excellent staff in the city of Chandler, have done their jobs very well for all the subcommittees. I've gotten very good feedback from those subcommittees. So where we're now is simply a process of moving these items forward. We have received education and review of the debt management financial policy, the importance of the bond ratings, and also the fiscal policies of this council, which has been a very important item for the committee members to keep in mind as we go through these projects. So the City Bond Exploratory Steering Committee and subcommittees have now met over 30 times. As a matter of fact, I have a sheet here to indicate that the subcommittees have met at least 4 times. Some have met 5 times. I will say they've made progress in their work. I learned today that the Parks Committee has already formulated their recommendations on both a short-term and long-term basis. The others are very diligent in their operation. A lot of tours of facilities are occurring. I can remember when I first was a city council member, some of these tours have been very informative to the council members, and they have really, to the committee members, and they have really learned a lot by going out and visiting the police stations, the fire stations, the water treatment facilities, and the like. So it's been a process of education and a process of being a part in their viewpoint as a part of the history of Chandler, realizing what was done by the city in the past, what was done 13 years ago when we had our last bond authorization, and the realization that they can make a contribution and help you as a council in making these decisions for the future with a possible bond election again. So with that, the bond committee, the education and support has continued. And just to review some of the items that some of the facilities they've toured, which have been very beneficial. They've included the Traffic Management Center, the Water Reclamation and Treatment Facilities, the fire and police stations, especially the older stations where they're realizing there's a need perhaps of making improvement. The Public Safety Training Center, the Chandler Municipal Airport, the Chandler Center for the Arts and Community Center, and Senior Center. And some of these facilities have never seen before as citizens. So that's been a part of their understanding of the importance of all these facilities. Staff has done a great job in supporting the Citizen Bond Exploratory Committee by offering information, explaining operational needs, and by addressing questions. Most recently, the Finance Committee had an excellent presentation by Fire as to their facilities and needs, and even IT, talking about the fiber network that serves throughout the city. And some of one tour in particular was greatly enjoyed by the IT committee, and that was of the traffic center. So again, a very, very educational period of time. So they're getting down to work now. And they're excited about now looking at the wish list, so to speak, and then looking at what the final list should be, looking at certainly the financial constraints and what may be necessary in the short term as well as the long-term basis. Obviously, the Chandler website is up, which is chandler.gov/bond-election. And this website is going to be increased now as we proceed to the educational or citizen input phase of the project. We're looking at redesigning or adding to the website where we can get citizen input, but also allow citizens to have some of the education exposure that the committee members, subcommittee members have had in terms of the history, in terms of our fiscal policies, in terms of what perhaps they would like to see in respective amenities in the city of Chandler. So the committee members are now getting to the heart of their charge to develop recommendations and priorities. That's phase 2. Staff will begin the public education process next week to inform residents about the work of the bond committee while encouraging comments to be submitted through the website. Over the next 4 to 6 weeks, each subcommittee will develop their list of priorities, both on a short-term basis and a long-term basis, and priorities that they realize will need to be approved by this council, and they're keeping that in mind on a constant basis. These lists will be shared with a finance subcommittee and steering committee for education and deliberation. And obviously, the steering committee will be the final decision point where all those projects will be reviewed so a presentation can be made to this council. We remain on target to provide recommendations in early 2021 to for the City Council's consideration of potential projects that could be funded through a future bond election. Let me just say again, on behalf of the citizens that are involved, they are honored by your selection. Their attendance has been outstanding. Their enthusiasm, as I've said before, has been certainly a pleasant item to witness. These are citizens that are very proud of being part of this process, and they understand the importance of what they're doing for the future history of this Chandler, and to allow you to be able to obtain their wisdom and suggestions as you make a difficult decision for any sort of bond authorization. So they understand their charge, and they appreciate your confidence in them. Any questions from council? Otherwise, things are going well. I'll be back, I believe, in December to give the next report as to phase 2 and give you an idea what's happening. But feel free to come to any of the subcommittee meetings. They'd love to see you there, if that's allowed by, I believe it is. I've had a former mayor already attend, but but it's a very interesting process. The meetings last for an hour and a half, and there's enthusiasm all over the place, a lot of questions, a lot of excitement, and a great amount of pride. Many of them have not been through this bond authorization process. It's been 13 years ago. And so they've become residents since, and they're amazed at what has been built, and they're excited about what could still be built. They understand that there's current bond authorization. They understand your CIP program. They understand all the projects and park plans. All those are being presented to them. So they understand what's important to the council. They want to be a part of the process to help you through this successful program so we can continue building for the future of the city. So thank you. I'm honored by this position of being the chairman, and I thank you for your confidence.
Thank you, Chairman Dunn. I do know that there's been, I hear a lot of enthusiasm from our commissioners, and I'm thrilled that they're digging in very deeply with this and anticipate that many of them, their roles will extend past the recommendation to actually help us present this and engage with their community when the time comes to present this to our community. So good job on all that you've done.
Thank you,
Council, do
Mayor.
you have any questions for Chairman Dunn? Vice Mayor?
Just to thank you. Thank you for your leadership and taking on this this massive role.
Well, thank you for your confidence.
We
It's
appreciate
been
it.
kind of fun to review what we've done in the past in terms of the many years of involvement by many of us. And I would encourage citizens to go on the website to understand what has occurred in the past, to understand that a bond authorization will give the opportunity of bringing so many more amenities to the city. Pickleball courts or whatever you may wish to have. And so we heard from Parks today. That's one department that's so excited about the possibilities of bringing more park amenities to certainly parts of the city where the citizens are expecting to have them. So the excitement level is high again, and they appreciate your confidence. Thank you.
Council, any additional questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Chairman.
Mayor, Council.
Council, next on our agenda, we have about 40-some items on consent. We have a couple on actions. I do have some comments to read, but before I read these, Councilmember Wong, did you still want to take item number 2 and put it on action?
Yes, I would like to move item number 2 to action.
All right, so we'll defer any conversation around item number 2 to action and discuss that at that time. Council, any additional items for that before I read these comments?
Oh, you got comments.
All right, thank you. So this is in regard to okay. I have looks like a couple speaker cards that are in relation to item number 4. So I'll just call these in the order that I've received these. And the first one is Melinda Anderson, and she supports item number 4 Would you like to speak, or are you just a statement of support? You're fine either way. It's you. I'd like to make a statement of support. All right. So just make a statement of support, okay? This is Melinda Anderson of 2038 East Linda Lane, Gilbert, Arizona. Okay. Well, I shouldn't have read your address, so.
Oh, that's okay.
All
I
right.
lived in that house for 55 years.
Okay, so
So-
clerk, we've got her address. I just read that.
My name is Melinda England Anderson, and it was my family home. And I want to say that I'm very much in support of the buildings. They are very nice. They're not two-story like the triplexes that are next to us. They won't encroach on anybody. And my mother is 87 years old, just recently was out of the hospital for heart failure. And so there is not any option for us at this point. She's already bought another home, and we are in no position to have anybody, of which we've never met in the 55 years we were there, to come in and tell us that we can't do it.
Next card is from Brittany Irwind, who would, regarding item number 4 and 5. Brittany, would you like to come up? Please state your name and address. And then you have, when that turns yellow, you should wrap up your comments.
Okay. So my name is Brittany Irwin. I live at 2951 West Marlboro Drive in Chandler, Arizona. I am speaking to you guys today because I oppose the development at 2845 North Price Road in Chandler. And apparently I am not the only one, because I have over 200 signatures of people who oppose. I don't know if you guys want that, but I went and did door to door, and I did an online
Item
petition,
number 4 and 5.
and I got about 200 signatures of people who oppose it. And the main reason why, I just have a question for you guys. Did you guys do a traffic study for that area? I'm just asking, because if so, I would like to know what were the results, because I called the state, because since it's on the frontage road, the state would have to do the traffic study, and I haven't gotten any results back from them yet. They said they're looking into it. So I was just wondering if a traffic study was done. And then I was also wondering if an environmental study was done and what were the results. Because if you put that many houses, it will be traffic. The main reason why I'm opposed of it is the amount of traffic. So you put 40 houses on 3.85 acres, and it will be a lot of traffic on the frontage road. And if it's under construction or there's a road closure or whatever, there'll be a lot of traffic. And just getting in and out of there would be hard for my neighborhood, which is Marlboro Estates, onto the frontage road. So they said that they'll put 40 houses on there, and each house can have up to 3 cars, right? So 40 houses times 3 is 120, and then they said you can have an additional parking of 14 visitors. So imagine if you have all those people trying to get out of that neighborhood at one single time. That will be difficult because it's only one way in and out of that neighborhood. So basically, I got to wrap it up. So basically, I'm just opposed because of all the traffic. So thanks for listening to me today.
All right, thank you. And we'll have I will give the developer time and as well as staff afterwards, after all of the comments have been read, to address any of the questions related to environmental and traffic. So if we can be ready with that, please, too. Next speaker card is from Wendy Yeager, also is opposed to this. Wendy, would you, if you've got just the same thing to say, please just say that. I don't think we need to, if you've got something new, please bring that.
I will, thank you. I won't repeat what Brittany said because I think she did a good job of that.
So your name
So-
and address for the.
Oh, my name is Wendy Yeager. My address is 2947 West Marlboro Drive in Chandler. Okay, I just wanted to say about this, I really recognize the need for housing, and I really applaud those that working towards getting that for people who need the housing. And however, I just really firmly believe that this proposed development doesn't fit within the community. The zoning's been changed from agricultural to residential, so there is something that's going to be built. I think that's just the way it's going to be because of the change in zoning. My hope and desire, though, is that it just isn't this particular plan that is being proposed. So I guess this is a repeat that it is a small acreage of the 3.8 acres, and they're proposing 600, or not 600, 40 houses. So with my understanding is, I think it's going to be approximately 600 or 14 or 16 600-foot houses, 900-foot houses, and 1,200-foot houses, just a small amount of the smaller amount. They're all connected with single-car garages, plus, as Brittany said, with all the cars, and a play park and a dog park, all in this little piece of land. So the purported homes, or their individual homes, is how they are advertised, but they are all connected. So it's sort of like just single-story row houses. So I think there's a little misguidance there in how the proposal is. So the homes, when I first saw the pictures of them, some of them were okay. The smaller homes are very small, bungalow like you would see at the beach or some such. And the facades on the other ones weren't so bad. So I was encouraged, though, by the new village attorney, Taylor, to visit a similar community that's around Gilbert and McLean. So in all fairness, I did that, and I went to that community and drove through it. So to give credit where credit is due, the colors were nice, the facades on the bigger houses were nice. It was a much larger property than mine, or this proposed one, but still kind of really crowded. So there's, I'm going to skip that. So the property in question, there's some of the things that people are worried about. Number one is devaluation from the rental properties. The renter says that they're all going to be rentals and that they're going to keep up maintenance. We have no guarantee of what that maintenance is going to be. I agree that the other place looked pretty good. Or if they're ever going to sell, and then what would happen with various properties.
And Wendy, if you could please wrap up your comments.
Oh, okay. I just have one more. Well, I did have another. I guess I'll skip it since I have to wrap up. But I just want to really ask you to take all of these things into consideration. And if something is going to be built there, to just not have it be so big and so crowded.
Right.
So that would be,
Thank you.
I'll sum it up with that.
Next
Thank
card
you.
is from Gary Anderson. Gary, would you also like to speak? Okay. Again, state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Gary Anderson, 2038 East Linda Lane. My wife spoke to you earlier. I've been a member of the family for over 40 years, been married almost 42. And years ago, it was all 5-acre parcels right along Price Road. The state came and put the highway in, put the frontage road in. Obviously, things change. Marlboro went in. We had second-story homes come in. So things change. And then to the south, the triplex condos came in. Again, 2-story, things change. So these are all single-story homes. I understand they're professionally designed and planned out with the city of Chandler to do the infill. So I'm here just to support the project. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And our last card is actually the developer, Taylor Earl. And there were a couple questions related to traffic study, environmental. If you're in a position to address those, I'd appreciate that as well.
Thank you, Mayor. For your record, Taylor Earl, address 3101 North Central Avenue. So as relates to traffic, there was no official study prepared other than we did work with staff and the traffic department within staff who has looked at this project. And they are in support of the project. This project only produces 25 peak hour trips, so it is a relatively low traffic generator. Although it does have 40 homes, they are smaller, and so the amount of cars that you would have would be different than if you were talking about 5-bedroom homes with teenage drivers and things of that nature. There is quite a bit of capacity off of Price Road. I could certainly pull up exhibits and show you, but the reality is that our project and then only the two south of it are the only ones that access Price Road, south of the subdivision they're talking about, onto this section, right? So below, from Warner Road up. People that are going to be accessing this would be people who live on this section. If you were south of Warner, you just get on the freeway. And so it's really only just a few projects, and then their community has a right out only. So in terms of quite a bit of capacity on the 2 lanes, it's one direction. Typically when we talk about traffic concerns, we're thinking about infill, oh, we can't make the left turn, or I can't do this movement. Here, everybody's getting out and turning right. So it's quite capable of making that. In terms of environmental study, I think we use that term as soil sampling, a thing like that. I think she was talking about environmental in terms of the impact on the community. And again, I would say that that's something that staff has looked at. In fact, the council looked at it broader in terms of the general plan. This is consistent with the general plan as it's up against a freeway corridor. Those types of areas are a little different than some areas in the city, and that's what a general plan is called for. So because we're consistent with that and staff is in support, having looked at that careful analysis of what the impact is, which I think is what she was mentioning in terms of environmental impact. So happy to answer any further questions, Mayor.
All right. Council, do you have any questions for the developer?
Mayor, just have
Councilmember Orlando.
just questions for the staff.
All right. So no questions for the developer. All right. If we could have appropriate staff person come up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Harley Melhorn, Junior Planner.
Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor. So Harley, do we normally require a traffic study?
Through the Mayor, Councilmember Orlando, I'm not aware of the specifics, which case it would be triggered. I know it has something to do with perhaps the number of units, but I know that one was not required in this case.
Do we? Okay, I need a more definitive answer if that's okay with you, Harley.
Of course.
It's a very specific question. Do we normally require traffic studies when we do this type of development?
Mayor, Councilmember Orlando, Harley is correct in that there's a threshold, a minimum number of units, and it's, I want to say, north of 200 before we actually then trigger a traffic study. This being 40, it did not. However, anecdotally, when we have our pre-tech review of a project, our traffic engineer is part of that review process, and so even if it's not triggered, it's still kind of viewed under the traffic engineer's eyes, and it is looked at the proposal and then also the roadway network that it's attaching to. And the applicant is correct that that section of the Price Road frontage, while there's traffic on it, it is far below its capacity. It's in the 20-30% range is what's currently operating at, and this doesn't even add 1% to that traffic volume. So based on that, the anecdotal review and kind of the technical review of it, traffic study was not necessary.
Okay, and then thank you. And I just want a little more detail for the record. That's why I'm asking. Do we? So the ordinance we have in place only requires it's 200 units or above.
That's the number that's in my head, but I could be wrong.
But we do have an ordinance in your, okay. Environmental study, what kind of environmental study would we do if we do something like this?
Mayor, council member, from an environmental study, not in the sense of, say, kind of how California requires those type of environmental studies. The applicant is also correct in that from an environment, and that means the physical built environment, but it also means kind of an emissions standpoint. The physical built environment is the evaluation that's done through starting at the general plan and then all the way through our design standards and everything. Once it gets to ultimately how the site is built, that's a function and kind of regulated by the building code and all reviewed at the time that the applicant submits building permits.
So Harley or you, did the applicant, have we have any other, have we have other uses for this property in the past or what? What have we seen on this property in the last few years?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, to my knowledge, it has only been a single-family residence, an agricultural property.
Okay, and they had the one resident on there, like we talked about Monday night, right, at one time?
Yes, Councilmember, correct.
Okay. All right, and then just looking at the map here, I see the Marbell Estates, obviously to the north of this. I'm very familiar with that project. And then what do we have to the east of it? There's another, is that county property there, or is that the city?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, that is unincorporated, large lot, single family.
Right, unincorporated, all right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Thanks, Harley. Thank you. And Harley, thank you for following up on some of those questions on Monday night. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Council, any additional questions on this item? If not, I believe a motion would be in order, unless there's some other items. Vice Mayor.
Yes, Mayor. I move for the approval of our consent agenda for Thursday, November 5th, items 1 through 45, with the exception of item number
2, and then 43 and 44 also on action.
2, 43, 44 for action.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Council, any additional comments, questions? Otherwise, please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. Next on our agenda, I know that Councilmember Wong has moved item number 2, but I'm going to take in order in which they appeared. So we'll now proceed with item number 43 and 44. And with that, I'm going to ask for a staff report, and then we'll call up the applicant.
All right, Mayor, Council, thank you. These items are all pertaining to the development project Evergreen Chandler, which is a multifamily development proposal. There are a number of items that pertain to this request. First, you have Annex 20-0001. This is the annexation and initial city zoning of a small parcel located in the southeast of the subject property. It is about a 1/4 acre in area, and upon annexation and initial city rezoning, it would be zoned to AG1, which is most comparable with its existing county zoning. Next would be an area plan amendment to the Chandler Air Park Area Plan, and that's PLH 20-0007. And you'll see here that that is requested for the entire subject site, including the annexed property. And the same goes for PLH 20-0006, the requested rezoning and preliminary development plan. So diving in a little bit more into the site, it is shown here in red. It is a little bit over 16 acres in area and located to the east of Arizona Avenue, just to the north of the intersection with Germain Road. This exhibit shows the existing land uses surrounding it, as well as on the site. The site has most recently been used for landscape supply storage, and also, when we look more closely here, the C3 parcel, vacant offices as well. Surrounding the site, west of Arizona Avenue, there are a number of existing mobile home units, and then just to the south of that, future by right multifamily appears to be developing. To the north of the site, you have self-storage, a nursery, landscape supplies, and then additional light industrial land uses to the northeast as well. Immediately adjacent to the site is the railroad, and then further material supply, shipping, scrap material yard east of that as well. Down on Germain Road, we have County and Circle K fueling station. So here again, looking more closely at the zoning of the current site. In green, we have a portion of the site that is currently agricultural, and that is including the parcel that would be annexed in. To the west of that, the small site that is C3 for commercial, and the purple area was most recently in 2008 rezoned to PAD for commercial, office, business park land uses, approximately 108,000 square feet of that use. So being that none of these zoning districts permit residential land uses, the applicant is of course requesting the rezoning. The rezoning to PAD would accommodate 396 multifamily dwelling units. When spread across this site, it equates to 23.8 dwelling units per acre. Here, the first exhibit on top, you can see the site layout, here being accessed from Arizona Avenue. The rendering on the bottom showing that entrance. There are 10 proposed 3-story buildings located in the center of the site, 9 2-story buildings located along the perimeter. They're proposing a building height up to 37 feet to accommodate the 3 stories. Here on the bottom, you see the proposed 2-story clubhouse that's located immediately upon the entrance. The primary building material is stucco. There is also some scored CMU, and you will primarily see flat parapet roof line, also with the inverted and angled roof line near the entrance. These elevations are the 3-story units, or 3-story buildings, again located towards the center of the site. On top here, a 3-story building located near the street, and on the bottom, these 2-story units would be located along the perimeter, just 10 feet from the property line. So now moving on from the proposed rezoning, we'll take a look at the guidance of our general plan. The black star here denotes the location of the site. It's located in an area recommended for employment future land uses, as shown in the purple. The blue outline you see surrounding number 3 identifies the Chandler Air Park growth area. And not shown on this slide, but here in red, is a further refinement of the employment future land use, the transitional employment corridor, and also a high capacity transit corridor aligns closely with that red area shown. So in the general plan, the guidance of the employment area and high capacity transit corridor, while employment is obviously to support the economy of Chandler and support land uses that create jobs, it does allow for residential to be considered. It asks that it be an integral component of an employment area or mixed use development. Further, the transitional employment corridor, that kind of subsection within the employment future land use, it recognized that existing along Arizona Avenue was already a variety of land uses, and it did not want to apply one future land use. So it allows council to further consider a variety of land uses. But the true intent of it was really to accommodate that existing variety and find an appropriate set of matching surrounding land uses. When we apply that guidance of the general plan, in staff's opinion, it doesn't appear that the proposal is truly an integral part of a mixed use or future potential mixed use employment set of land uses here on this site. It appears to bifurcate the site instead of hopefully working more with it in an integral fashion by maybe sharing access or circulation, parking, or even a design aesthetic. As an example, on the right, we believe this is a more integrated application of residential. Although you don't have any surrounding employment land uses, it's located near the intersection, and it has retained a large area that could still attract businesses and employment land uses. Looking back to the transitional employment corridor further, it really spoke again to that existing variety of land uses and just trying to accommodate that. Whereas here, staff really sees that we have rather a consistent set of existing land uses as well as recommended land uses. And so that injection of residential, again, may not be appropriate. Here again are exhibits showing those existing surrounding land uses. And again, they just do not appear to be appropriate as recommended by the guiding plan. Further, the guiding plan references a Chandler Air Park area plan for this growth area. The star again shows where the site is located. This is called out as commercial office business park land uses and also a light rail corridor overlay, which speaks to mixed uses or residential as well to be considered. Here more closely, you see the site outlined in white, and this is showing, I'm sorry, for this area, it is recommended for commercial office business park. To the east, you see the railroad, and then light industrial and other industrial uses surrounding it, which are further recommended. The Chandler Air Park area plan recommends that we again ensure land use compatibility, protect employment land uses, protect the airport more specifically, and preserve and grow existing businesses, and fully develop high quality employment centers, specifically in the commercial office business park recommended land use areas. So the proposed amendment would change that commercial office business park area into a recommendation for high density residential as shown here. And again, when staff applies these guiding plans, it seems that instead of ensuring a compatibility of land uses, this may reduce it by injecting residential where there currently is rather consistent light industrial commercial uses. We believe that it may reduce employment. As explained in your memo, Economic Development has taken a look at the overall site here, and if it were held off on being developed as multifamily and instead developed with an employment land use, it may generate up to 230 jobs for existing Chandler residences. Instead of supporting the operation of the airport, the Chandler Airport Commission has determined that this constitutes a conflict with the existing and proposed operation of the air park. And they came to this determination based on the number of dwelling units that are proposed and an even greater number of residents, approximately 800, being exposed to aircraft noise on a daily basis. Instead of supporting existing or future businesses, again, Economic Development has supported that this may diminish the potential of existing businesses by encouraging other multifamily development proposals to come forward to council. And last but not least, instead of fully developing a high quality employment center, it is removing one that is already zoned for on this site, as well as the additional parcels that have been added. So our findings, to recap, is that this proposal is inconsistent with the general plan, as well as the Chandler Air Park area plan. Upon being presented to the Chandler Airport Commission, it was determined to be a conflict with the operation of the airport. And as explained in the memo, Economic Development has also weighed in and advises against the rezoning. And for that reason, we are recommending denial of this request.
So at Planning and Zoning, was it, what was the vote on the denial in this, please?
It was a vote of 5-2.
5-2, okay. Council, what questions do you have for staff before we move on to the applicant? Councilmember Orlando.
So, thank you, Mayor. When you say conflict with the airport operations, you don't mean flying operations. You mean business development? Because it's
Yes,
two different things.
And I would defer more so to the Air Park Administrator to more precisely answer that question, but not with the, it did not appear that the conflict was with the actual flying aircrafts, but more so with the ability to sustain the airport, attract businesses that relate to the airport.
Okay, that's why I'm going to be very clear when we say operations. You know, I think in being an old military Air Force guy, I'm thinking flights. So I want to be clarified in my own mind. We're good on that. All right. Is Arizona Avenue considered a high-capacity corridor?
Through the mayor, councilman, yes, it is.
Okay. And so why would we have a case that was just polled as item 2 that staff talked about on Monday night, indicating that the reason why we want the higher density there is because of the high capacity corridor. That was one of the main reasons. And we're taking employment there. I mean, we have already 2 buildings there at that right now that are employment. We're reconfiguring that to multifamily. Yet we're taking this one, which is currently employment or could be employment, and we don't want multifamily. So what's the difference here? What are we trying to do here? What are we saying to the developer community out there?
Sure. Through the mayor, councilman, each development project is different and unique in each way. That item, for example, is adjacent to an existing shopping center to the east that could use some residents injected there to help support it and sustain it. We've heard from applicants coming in that the office environment has really changed over the years or decades, and that the existing improvements on that site aren't as marketable as they used to be. So there, I believe, and we could defer to that planner for further details, but it believes the benefit there is really to support the existing commercial land uses to the east.
Okay, and again, I'm just trying to say, just reiterate what you just said, is each site is different, each site is independent, and we have to evaluate that until, we should be evaluating that on the merits of each site, is what you do, what P&Z does, of course, what this council does. Okay, because and that was my point, so you just reiterate my point. Mayor, I'll hold off on some other questions for the applicant.
Councilmember McClemens.
So if the perfect project walked along, what would it be right there?
Through the mayor, councilman, the perfect project in an employment.
Yeah, I mean, you're recommending not approving this, and so what would you prefer?
Mayor, I would ask Micah Miranda to come up and answer that question.
Absolutely. I would also like to ask Micah to come up here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Through the mayor, Councilmember Clymans. In today's climate, the appropriate use would obviously follow what the general plan calls for. That's kind of what staff's guiding direction would be, is to follow the guiding documents that we've been handed. This area calls for employment. Now, as we drill down into specific building types and uses, I think we've seen a lot of activity in and around the airport that supports and gives direction as to what that preferred use would be from an industrial perspective, much less an office perspective.
So, I mean, Class A industrial, I mean, what kind of office space do you, what kind of industrial building, I mean, what are you thinking there?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Clymans, I think what the next logical use would be industrial flex, 30-foot ceiling, probably looking at a FAR of about 33% on site. Very consistent with what we see elsewhere in the Air Park area.
All right, thank you, sir.
So, given this plot that's been assembled by the owner, I guess one of the concerns is just looking at the other uses that are around there. Can't really cross over, and I mean, I don't foresee anything economically feasible where a business would cross over the railroads, because that's kind of a hard stop. But there seems to be some county north, again, and the nursery south. Is it your opinion, or would you foresee that in order to have that kind of flex development, that it would require to again assemble more properties to make that feasible, or is that truly feasible as it stands as just this 30 acres? I don't remember when it was 38 acres. 16, sorry. Thank you.
Through the mayor, vice mayor, looking at the plot size and kind of the dimensions of industrial products we see come in, we see some opportunities. You look to the north, there's properties that look very similar to it in terms of geometry and layout that could accommodate the site. depending on orientation, really looking more east and west type of approach as opposed to a north and south. So, you know, without even looking, I don't want to speak for the other adjacent properties in terms of assemblage. I don't like going down those
No,
roads,
I
especially
understand.
what somebody wants to do. But even without assemblage, I think it definitely has opportunities from an industrial perspective.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
So Micah, I know we've met twice and talked about multi-housing and jobs, and this council has been pretty bullish on economic development. I know you've given us a number in the past of jobs per households in Chandler, about 1.16. Where are we at with that?
Mayor, right now, just this past year, we went from a 1.16 to a 1.24. So the policies that we've been laying out have been successful in increasing our jobs to housing ratio.
And I know we've got several more residences that are since we're in the airport area, they're kind of lining up in the queue to land. But with our closer approach to build out, again, it really does require every parcel to be examined and for council to decide, do we want to be a place with jobs or again, allowing just more of a suburb nation with more housings. But in your recommendation for this is basically because of zoning. I know we've got a long-standing position. It used to be that the east side of Arizona Avenue was more lined for commercial and jobs, close between there and the tracks and beyond. The west side traditionally had a more favorable look for housing. Is that still the overall look that we're approaching on these?
Through the mayor, again, yes. And it's really the approach staff takes is really following those guiding documents, the general plan, the air park area plan, to really flesh out recommendations based upon what's been approved by the citizens and councils.
Okay. Council, any questions for Micah Miranda?
Mayor, yeah, follow up.
Councilmember.
Follow up to Councilmember McClendon's question. What have we seen come in that area? Who's contacted us to say, I want to build something out there?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Orlando, the area has actually been very attractive for industrial development. Just to the east, we have the Via West development. Further east along the Price Corridor, or excuse me, in the Air Park area, we're seeing a lot of industrial and flex projects come through. So activity within that industrial flex space has been very strong. And you just drive through the Air Park area corridor, you can really see the desire for product out there.
So let me more specific question. How about for this specific piece of property? Have you seen any activity for this specific piece of property?
Through the mayor, Councilman Orlando, for this specific property, nothing other than what's been presented and approved already.
Okay, so are we, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll follow up with the applicant on that because they might have, might be more clear what's been going on in that area.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Micah.
You did. Vice Mayor.
I just want clarity, because the northern parcel was talked about, is that already, so there was an applicant that came in a while ago to get that rezoned for commercial industrial. Was that, or it was commercial on the road? Oh, so I guess we're back to
planning.
Sorry.
Yeah. So with this,
I'm done with Mike. I'm sorry.
Questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Planning question?
Yes, planning
Okay.
question.
But you can still stay.
All right, I'll hang up.
Through the mayor, councilman, yes, in 2008, if it comes up back onto your screen, the purple area that was rezoned to PAD did accommodate over 108,000 square feet of commercial office business park land uses.
And then on the just south of it, so 3C3, so that was also zoned for commercial already too, correct?
Yes, yep. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for staff? Seeing none, I'd like to invite the applicant to come up. State your name and address, please.
Mr. Mayor, Charles Humano, P.O. Box 1833, Tempe, Arizona, for the record. These are still the staff presentations. I don't want to. Perfect, thank you. So we're here without a recommendation of support from staff. That's unusual. We don't normally do that. In fact, I can't remember the last time that that's happened, but this is 2020. And so I'd ask you to give me a little leeway to explain why we have a different vision for the case. Normally, you see a lot of the same slides, you see a lot of the same interpretations because we've worked with staff. And in this case, we have for almost a year to try to come to an agreement. But the simple fact is we don't agree. We don't agree on sort of what the reality of the property is. I'd like to spend some time talking to you about how we got here and why we see the world the way that we do. We've proposed a project here. I think one of the things that's important to note is that not only really has there been no comment about the design of the project, we did work with staff and changed the project quite a bit to come up with the design that we thought they could be supportive of. But that you won't find any neighborhood opposition to what we're proposing. However, there is opposition to what the staff is proposing, not only from us, but from other property owners. This site has been here for a long time. I'm going to ask Bill to speak during part of this. Bill has spent over half his life, 40 years assembling this piece. And we can talk about it here in 15 or 20 minutes. And it sounds like it's a really easy thing to combine and assemble. And that's just not the case. It's not been easy to do. There's been a number of things that have been said this evening that sort of reflect what this council has to do, not in just this case, in every case, but these are the cases where it's really important, which is the 7 of you have to decide the case, especially when we don't agree with staff. This site has looked pretty similar to this for an awfully long time. Before that, it looked considerably worse, and you'll hear a little bit about that from Bill. But this is what Arizona Avenue looks like today and has for some time and probably would otherwise for some time. And this is, again, the Arizona Avenue gateway from the freeway to lots of other things. It's a challenging piece for a number of reasons. And you've heard that from staff, and we don't disagree. It is challenging, and it is in some ways a bit unsightly. We see that as a bit of an advantage, and I'll explain why. The site, as you've heard, is not too far from the freeway. It's a challenging piece. It's really surrounded in many ways. Obviously, there's no opportunity to expand to the west. Arizona Avenue creates that border. The railroad to the west, the Arizona Avenue to the east. The railroad provides a pretty hard corridor as well as SRP, who has an easement. That easement is pretty relevant as well because it provides water. That water is why Moon Valley is there and not any number of other places. Both Central Storage and Moon Valley have been pretty clear. You know, one of the things that Chandler requires is a neighborhood meeting, and we went through that process and did that. And unlike most cases where you get folks who are concerned about the development, we had folks from 3 of the sides come to us and say, I hope that you're not trying to make us do something different with our land because we have no interest in doing that. And that creates for us a bit of a problem. It's wonderful to talk about assembling a larger project, and there's been discussion in previous hearings. It sort of changed some over time, but having 75 acres and developing that into Class A office space, and we don't think that's very realistic for a number of reasons, which I'll get into. It's also worth pointing out that the property has been in the market for some time, even with the existing zoning in place, for exactly the thing that you're being told would be most effective here. The simple fact of the matter is it hasn't been effective. It is not a good use for that, and we'll continue to explain why. This site does have some natural challenges. One of them is the mobile home park immediately to the west of us. At one point in Chandler's history, and I think that's true throughout the valley, mobile home communities and RV parks were temporary uses. They were something you could do with property until you could find a better use. And that's just not true anymore. The value of mobile home communities has skyrocketed. It is not reasonably feasible to think that someone's going to pay the prices they pay for these parks and to come in and do something different. And frankly, you're not likely to find great business uses that are anxious to go across the street from a mobile home community, but it doesn't end there. And there are a number of uses that are really unlikely to ever change. One of them is the refuse transfer station. And I was here in this, I guess it was another chamber at the time, but I remember when this went through and it was a highly contested issue. And one of the things people were saying at the time is if you put a refuse transfer station here, it's never going away. And that's probably true. So we have a piece of land here that will likely forever be sort of bound by mobile home communities and a transfer station. And staff has made the argument, which I agree, is not particularly sightly. It does box us in, and it boxes us in because we also have successful businesses to the north and south of us. And those things aren't likely to change. In fact, they have told us in no uncertain terms that they have no desire to change their use. They have no desire to assemble. We've talked about assemblage quite a bit with the city, with the Planning Commission. And I think it's worth pointing out that the person who is most incentivized to assemble this land is in fact the owner. If he could have assembled more property over the last 40 years, he absolutely would have done it. It would have put him in a better position. It simply isn't possible. The people who have owned the land have their own businesses and their own plans. And that's generally how it works. If you have property, you generally get to do what you would like unless the city comes and eminent domains it. And we've asked, does the city have an intention to come and eminent domain additional lands? And I guess that is a question for you. If the city intends to take additional pieces and do it through eminent domain, then I guess that would change things. Then you would have larger swaths of land to do things, but you'd still be stuck with the same boundaries, the same issues of a mobile home park across the street and a transfer facility and other pretty tight industrial uses next to it. We've also talked about general plan, and I'll talk about that as well. We certainly have focused on the general plan. We'll do that a little more. I think it's worth talking about nearby housing options. I want to spend a few minutes talking about the idea that Chandler has, which has been, I think Micah was quite right. He's been very successful. He's been your economic development director for some time, and I think he's done an outstanding job bringing great jobs to Chandler. He's to be commended for it. It doesn't mean I agree with him all the time, and I don't agree with him in this particular instance. And I think you have to look at the particular piece of property, not just the overarching general philosophy. Generally speaking, it's good to use pieces to bring the great jobs that Intel is certainly something that is synonymous, at least in the West, with Chandler. They've brought great jobs to Chandler, and I think that they have in part been responsible for some of the high quality of living we have in Chandler. And all of you, frankly, should be commended as well for having that vision. But again, that doesn't mean that every property is looked at equally and can be used for the same thing. Here we're saying, not only is this piece not that kind of piece, but there are other needs as well that support it. And I think one of the other things we heard from your economic development director is that the office environment has changed, and the things that bring people to office have changed as well. It seems that roughly 20 to 30% of the people at some of the companies we're very proud of actually live in Chandler. And it's frankly a tough thing to find a place to live in Chandler. In this part of town in particular, in Chandler in particular, the rental rates are 3% vacancy, which means that there are almost no apartments to rent. If you want to rent, you're lucky to find a place. If you want to buy a home in Chandler, good luck. There aren't many for sale. And if you're looking, the statistic I heard most recently is that there are approximately 200 homes for sale. And if you're looking at ones that are under 300,000, that number drops to about 20 to 30, depending on the day. And we keep bringing in jobs, and those jobs would like to be housed near their jobs. And some of them are temporary jobs. Hospitals are coming to town. And they, for example, have been pretty clear that one of the things they do is hire traveling nurses. And there aren't places for those people to live in Chandler and near the medical facilities that they're going to operate. As we look more into the general plan, and I think it was Councilman Orlando that mentioned, maybe it was somebody else, is this near a high capacity transit corridor? It certainly is. And that certainly gives you a reason, as you heard in the other case, and I appreciate you pointing out, we certainly have had the pleasure of listening to the other case a couple of different times, and that's sort of how it works. We follow the same path, and so we've listened to them in the Planning Commission, and we've listened to them here in this chamber, and we certainly wonder the same thing. How is it that the same philosophy works against us and for us on different cases? And frankly, you'll hear from Bill that, frankly, it doesn't seem fair to Bill, who's owned the property for 40 years, but we'll get more into that as this moves on. But the high capacity transit corridors are appropriate locations for development. high-intensity mixed land uses. Such developments would create opportunities for living within walking distance for schools, stores, and restaurants. It's worth noting that this area has a bunch of restaurants. One of the things you heard about the other location is it might help support retail. Well, it's certainly worth noting that this location is just about a mile south of the downtown. COVID in particular has been hard on restaurants, but at any point in time, restaurants would like to have more residents who could spend their discretionary income. And I guess in two ways that gets to my next point. Why would we think this piece of property that I acknowledge has warts? I acknowledge it is not the most attractive piece of land. Why would that make sense to us? Well, we don't think it makes sense to a Class A office user because frankly it's unsightly. And if you have more than one story, you certainly do not want to be trying to lease space looking over a refuse transfer facility. But for us, we see it differently. We think there is a need. This council and others, in fact, there are some articles recently in the newspaper referring specifically to Chandler and affordable housing. But we're not talking about affordable housing here. There's another discussion to be had about affordable housing. And there are some of the most amazing houses in Chandler that anywhere in the valley. But there's also a bunch in between. And what we're suggesting is workforce housing. And I think that we all have a different view of what that means today. I think before March, we all thought differently about the people that might be serving us on a regular basis, the essential workers. And they need places to live too. And the people who work downtown need places to live. And the people who work in the hospitals need places to live. And we think that no one is going to end up in our apartment by accident. They're renting there on purpose. They're renting there because they can afford it. They're renting there because they like the quality of the units. And because the location is a little less desirable, and because we don't have to provide structured parking, we can do it at a different rate. We can do it in a more affordable way. So we can provide that workforce housing. But they're doing it knowing they want to be in Chandler. They want to be part of the community. They want to be downtown having drinks and maybe taking an Uber home or riding a bike home, having dinner, going for a jog on a Saturday morning and using the amenities of downtown. And so we think that these residents become not only integral parts of the downtown, but also that very business community that you talk about. I agree with Micah that as you get closer to the airport, you can find some great locations for companies to do great businesses. And Micah has been incredibly successful in getting you those businesses. In fact, so successful that it strikes me as a little bit odd that for nearly 15 years, this site has been open, available, and zoned, and not utilized in any way for the very use that your staff hopes it will be. And I will tell you, and Bill will tell you, that they had a project that was zoned, spent nearly $2 million on the project before they realized it just wasn't feasible. It's not a great site for what we would like it to be. And just that's the way things work sometimes in life. The Transitional Employment Corridor is also part of the plan. And this is located between Arizona Avenue and the Union Pacific Railroad, this site specifically. And I want to read this part because I think it's really important. This area, and this is a direct quote from the code, or from the general plan, this area is unique in the employment designation because it is characterized by a mix of land uses, including industrial, institutional, recreational, neighborhoods in a range of residential densities. The Evergreen site here is obviously a mix of uses. You've heard that before. A compatible mix of land uses may continue to be considered. Let me read that again. A compatible mix of land uses may continue to be considered within the corridor's employment designation. The appropriate land use mix will consider conditions such as adjacent uses, parcel size, and transitioning techniques as presented, and any particular development request to determine compatibility. Well, that's exactly what we're asking this council to do. It's literally the thing that is in the general plan that we're asking you to do. We are asking you to take a look specifically at this challenging piece of land, this piece of land that we think has no other reasonable use, and to allow residential. And we know that the mini storage people don't care. In fact, nobody is an objection to it, or you'd see them here in the chambers. But the mini storage people actually see us as a great user because, frankly, some of our residents will probably be their clients. The nursery, likewise, doesn't want to leave. It would be economically foolish for them to do so, and they're quite clear about that. But for us, having a nursery is sort of a unique, novel, great use that's next to us. Again, people know where they're moving, but it's certainly not in conflict to live next to trees. It's actually considered a wonderful thing. And you've heard a lot about the airport. I don't want to spend too much time on this. And of course, this is an important issue to us. We're happy to go back and answer questions on any of the things if you think we've glossed over something. But we did go to the airport commission. And I guess the first thing that we thought was, well, we're awfully far away. We're, mile and a half away, mile and a quarter away, as a crow flies, much further by street. And I think, Councilman, your question about whether or not this is a business issue or a safety issue or an airport operations issue was a good one, because what we learned from the airport was a number of things. First of all, there are an awful lot of residents that are way closer to us that are going to be impacted in this. And so you've sort of had the opportunity to test out whether it's a problem. And we heard from the airport director, who obviously was not favorable to the project, but in answer to a specific question, he mentioned that he'd never heard a complaint from a multifamily user. Nevertheless, there are conditions drafted, and if you were to accept those conditions, they require us to notify users, and we would certainly do that so that everyone would know that they were in an airport area. We, of course, think they would know that anyway, but we have no problem notifying people. It's also worth noting that we're pretty far out the path of sound. We're really not in the airport core. We may be in the plan, but as a practical matter, we're pretty far outside of it. Again, you've heard no concern from the community about this, and you haven't also heard concern from any of the departments or any of them that have been built and for some time that are much closer. I do want to talk a little bit more about sort of where we fall in life in terms of rent. And I've talked about this concept of workforce housing, and I know that every one of you is familiar with it. I know that one of the issues that you have to grapple with on a regular basis is how do you balance that? How do you make sure there are places for everyone? Well, I think I've told you some of the reason why it makes sense for us. It's a less desirable location in terms of our surroundings. We think that makes it pretty uninviting for most uses, but not for us because it gives us a price advantage. I think you've heard that our construction type is different. We don't have to have a 4 or a 5-story building. We have a 3-story building, which we think actually fits well with the existing uses. And we don't have a parking structure, which adds a lot of cost to a building. And so what that means is, and again, this has been an issue you're not unfamiliar with. There have been articles for some time in the paper discussing exactly this issue. It doesn't face just Chandler, it faces the entire valley, but obviously Chandler has been sort of the center of that discussion from time to time. Workforce housing, as you probably know, is roughly between 80 and 120% of AMI. And our rents are forecasted to be in that range. It's not by accident, it's on purpose. We think that's a niche that frankly is not served in anywhere near the downtown. There isn't product that does what we're suggesting to do, in our opinion. Now, we're business people. If we didn't think this was successful, we wouldn't propose it. Again, you can see that our rents clearly fall within that 80 to 120% of AMI. And again, that isn't an accident. It's on purpose. What that means in real terms is that we are less expensive than the apartments that are downtown. We're not trying to compete with them. Now, having said that, our community is nice in a very different way. Despite the location and the lack of structured parking, we do have some garages. We have a gated facility. The interior of the units and the amenities are the same as you might find. We have pools and other amenities. We have solid surface countertops. So the inside of the unit, which is obviously where our residents will live, is similar. The outside of the unit and the location is less desirable. That means that necessarily it's a reduced price. And again, we think that the companies that Chandler so covets, and rightfully so, they have employees who need housing. And we think we can help fill that niche, particularly with the hospitals coming online shortly. They have significant need for employees and significant need for those employees to live somewhere. I want to talk a little bit about landscaping because that's come up from time to time as well. Not particularly on this case, but I certainly have heard it on other cases in the last couple of days. And so I want to point out, our density is 22 units per acre, which is significantly lower than some of the cases you've heard. Again, that's a difference in the construction type, but we've made sure that we have significant landscaping, in part because we're next to a nursery and that we're tying in again, we're asking you to consider the surroundings, and so should we. And so we have added a detached sidewalk with another row of trees and then another row of landscaping. And we think that makes for, you know, very inviting environment along Arizona Avenue. And compare that to what exists today. I'm sure if I hadn't shown you the slide, every one of you would know what it looks like today. And I am sure that when you drive by that, that is not one of the things that make you proud of Chandler. But it could be. And so we have provided landscaping that would, we think, be really impactful. Now, I've talked a lot about what we want to do and why it makes sense. I have a few points I want to tie back in. But because we've talked about assembly today, and because staff has been pushing us to assemble more, I think it's important to hear from Bill. Bill, I want you to come up and introduce yourself, and I want you to talk about your history, not only here in Chandler, but as it relates to this piece of property, because you're the owner.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I appreciate being here for your time and consideration. Excuse me?
Can you state your name and address, please?
My name is William Valentic, and I live in Chandler in Eden Estates off of Alma School Road. I've been a resident in that particular area for about 12 years now. Was raised at the corner of Ray and Price Road, going back to where I was 3 years of age. I've seen this entire area grow. I've spent most of my life here, which I just turned 75. On this piece of property is what I find is interesting, and I really appreciated the comment that you made about considering the piece of property. One set of rules doesn't fit every situation. This property is unique for some of the reasons already pointed out because of the neighbors where it is. But in 1980 or 81, my sisters and I purchased the first piece of property thinking that would be a great investment because it was so narrow and long, not hardly anything could be done with it. Directly to the north of it, there were 2 parcels there. There are a total of 7 that comprise this piece. The gentleman that had that, a young man by the name of Winfrey, was killed in an automobile accident. He was trying to build a nursery there. It was in foreclosure. I thought, well, we need more width, I'll buy it. Subsequent to that, my sister acquired 5 acres exactly east of the last 2 pieces that I had purchased, which gave us kind of a square parcel. In 2017, the parcel directly to my south, which is next to Moon Valley, the gentleman that owned that, Mr. Pedersen, had cancer. Yeah, I think he's passed away since then, but had it. I was afraid that someone would come in and buy that piece of property and put it to some use that would diminish the attractiveness of the parcel, which I had at the time. And so I didn't want that value diminished because of that. But my ties to the assemblage of this property goes back 40 years. The different parcels that we acquired, the insightfulness of them. 3 different building structures had been removed, a couple of sheds. A great deal of cleanup has taken place to this to make it the parcel that it is today. Now, in considering the comment about considering each parcel as it exists, the question is, it's not like this property just came on the market and Evergreen is the first individual or the first entity that came down and thought, hey, we'd like to do something with it. It's been available since I've owned it. It's been available for 40 years. Staff presented a diagram of the use that a rezoning application back in 2008. We went into escrow in 2006 with Adobe Land. Again, after investing approximately $2 million in the project, they pulled the plug on it. It's not feasible. It's not going to work. So how long do we have to wait for a good use of this property to become available? Well, my concern and my interest with Evergreen, they have a nice project for this property. And it's not like by utilizing the property for their project that it's going to knock out other uses that are waiting in line for it. There are no others at this time. And it's been that many years, 40 years, to get this thing to a shape where perhaps somebody would be able to do something with it. They have a nice project. Another point that I would make while I'm here, if I can, recently the tax bills came out on this. There's 7 different parcels, $24,000, over $24,000 a year, property taxes on it. We've been paying these type of taxes on it for 40 years. How many more years until something can be done with the property? My feeling is that the highest and the best use of the property is being represented here today. There's a user that can do something with it that will build a project that Chandler can be proud of. It's not like we're coming in and by utilizing this property, we are contaminating, if you will, the potential uses for the other surrounding property. There are no other uses for the surrounding property except what it's being used for today. This is a great project. Chandler would be proud of it, and certainly to support, we talk about creating jobs. What about supporting the jobs that already exist in those commercial centers? They're on the corner of Willis Road and Arizona Avenue going back to the freeway. We have Winco, Kohl's, I think I referred to it one time as Target. I think the name changed. You go across the street, Sam's Club closed up because of lack of participation from different individuals that could utilize that facility. We have existing businesses there now that need support. This is a great area for that. And again, it's a project that the city of Chandler will be proud of if permitted to be built. I appreciate your time. I don't know if any of you have any specific question for me, which I'd be happy to answer.
At this point, let me for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the history that Bill presents is important. I think it helps tell the story about how we got here, but I also think it helps tell the story about where we go. We can talk theoretically about what might happen and whether this might be a Class A office space or whether somebody might come and re-envision a piece of industrial land that was there. But Bill's been in this community for 40 years on this piece of property trying to make something happen. And that's a real question before you. As we ask you to make decisions, we realize this is a tough decision to make. But part of the discussion is, what is it that Bill does if he can't do this? Because for 40 years, more than half his life, he has worked to make this property something. He has an opportunity to do that. Now, you have responsibility too to make sure that it's a good decision. But our argument is that this land has not been good for other uses. If it had been, it's already zoned, it would have been used. As Bill said, we don't take away the ability for you to do other things, but we also don't require you to take away the businesses that are there that are successful, particularly Moon Valley, to make something bigger and better of it. This piece of land will always have challenges. It's why the code itself allows you to make these decisions. It's why the general plan itself allows you to consider the additional uses surrounding it. It's why it even talks about residential uses. Our ask of you is to accept that this piece of land works as residential and that Bill doesn't have to spend the rest of his life hoping that somebody will come along and put something in that piece that frankly doesn't fit, because the other uses that you would like to see don't fit, or they would have already happened. And so with that, I'll take questions. I know, Mayor, you said you would provide after questions.
Let me start with a question. You've mentioned your 40-year investment, or Charles, I think you can answer this rather than. How long has this acreage been assembled? Your 40 years started this process, but how long was the last piece?
So I think Bill answered that, and I'll kind of go back over it. In fact, I think I can find a slide that speaks to it. It has been in different stages as he has tried to find uses. Specifically,
this acreage as the rectangle that it is, how long has it been assembled? William, maybe you could.
So this piece on the bottom, as you can see, one second, and I'll bring you up. The C3 in the ag piece is a piece that has more recently come in. That's how many years?
Yeah, 2017.
Okay, thank you. That simple question, so I wanted to know. Thank you. Council, what other questions do you have for the applicant? Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Humanel. I appreciate it, Bill, and thanks for being here. The pad itself is, what's that zoned? Is it all commercial?
The PAD itself, the northern portion is in fact a PAD. That's what it's zoned.
Okay.
And so it's got an industrial use on it that's been there for many, many years, almost 15 years. We've been unable to find anybody who will do anything with it. I think one of the points that Bill has made several times, I don't think he's made tonight, is that he has had people come and ask him to do something with a very narrow piece along Arizona Avenue. Everybody loves Arizona Avenue. We do too. The problem with this piece is, what do you do with the rest of it? It's a very thin, long piece, and you're never going to get access on the east side of it. So your access will always be on Arizona Avenue, and the only real interests he's ever gotten are just the pieces along Arizona Avenue, but then it destroys your ability to do anything with the bulk of the property. Is that fair?
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does. It just, I get it. Like, it would be challenging to pay 40 years of property taxes for, you're paying into something you're not actually getting services for, other than you're just sitting on the land. It's an investment, but I'm just interested. I'm just curious, and it's probably for a conversation another time, why there's never been the attempt to rezone it to ag, but keeping the area plan and the general plan in place. That would save the applicant those taxes, but that's probably for a different conversation.
I think in
It's just
part,
interesting.
it's his strong hope for Chandler and belief that it would be something sooner. I don't think that when he started this 40 years ago, I know because we've had these discussions, that he thought it would take 40 years. I mean, it's interesting. We talked about, the former mayor was here. It's good to see him today, and talking about the bond election and all the things that have happened, and kind of thinking about that, and the new city hall and all the other things. But 40 years ago, there wasn't a freeway there. In fact, we didn't even know there would be a freeway there. So when Bill started this process, it was before there was a freeway. I would argue he is certainly one of the early believers in downtown Chandler and the airport area, and he's certainly seen it all grow. And if I gave him an hour here to talk about it, I guarantee you he'd tell you some stories you'd love.
Council, any additional questions?
Mayor.
Councilmember Orlando.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you and other business leaders or representing clients have been involved with several of our discussions over the last year and a half on planning, zoning, and our thought process on where we want to go with this community. I think you were here the last time we chatted about this. I know a couple
I was.
were. And I know you know our desire where we want to go as a community, and I know staff is working on the elements to make this vision a reality. So you've heard a lot of these discussions. And one of the discussions, at least I have been advocating, and I know others, so we've talked about this at least 2 or 3 times, is workforce housing, downsize housing, new housing for people just getting started. It's not just a city of Chandler issue. It's valley-wide, quack, it's nationwide. So I want to drill down a little bit on this business model where you're talking about these rents are that's your business model, which is good. If you found a niche, I'd like to know more about other developments you put in place. And quite frankly, and you and I know each other many, many years, how do I know if I approve this based upon the fact that we are providing workforce housing, that this thing 2 years from now is going to be, rents are going to rise, and it's going to be, an issue in the future?
I understand the question. Let me take a stab at it. I think there are a number of reasons. Gene and Kevin have worked on this case for a long time too, and while I disagree with them about the use, it's just a difference of opinion. There's no malice involved on either side. We just don't agree with what this should be. We think it should be residential, and we think that it serves that exact workforce population that you're talking about. We've designed the project to be that. We're not tried to shoehorn it in and make it something later that it's not. We knew that was a demand. We know, frankly, that we have a site that's less sexy. It's less exciting. It's not across the street from City Hall. It's a mile away from City Hall. You got to go under a freeway and buy a mobile home community and look out onto some industrial property that includes a transfer station and 2 fueling facilities to get there. So our residents know that they're getting something that's a deal, and they know why they're getting the deal. We're not hiding the fact that that's the case. In fact, we're offering it up. We think they want to live near downtown, but frankly, probably can't afford to. Have we done it before? Yes. I'm going to give you a couple of different examples of it, and I'm going to tell you why. We have several different facilities that we've built already in town, in the Phoenix metropolitan area, not in Chandler, and those rents have stayed in place for years now, and in fact, in some cases, they've even dropped. So, look at a couple of different things here. And in fact, one thing I might do is, in addition to talking about myself, I think I'm going to invite Matt Evans, who runs the multifamily division for Evergreen, and have him talk a little bit about it as well, because it's one thing to hear from me, but it's another to hear from Matt himself about why it is really our intent to serve these markets.
So Matt, let's just cut to the chase here, right? I know it's been a great presentation, good dialogue. You built this before, check, got that. Your business model allows you to keep rents at within very good workforce housing rates, much lower than we're seeing it even downtown Chandler by, I don't know, $400, $600, $800 a month, probably $1,000 a month of some of the rents today. But again, I got to ask that question to you. What's your history on basically keeping these rents at a reasonable rate?
It's really the market. It's where the rents start. Excuse me. Instead of going into the high profile areas, we go into a little bit off the beaten path. It commands a little bit lower rent. We get a little bit better price on the land. We go with lower density product, lower construction cost, so we can start the rents at a lower level, typically 10 to 15% lower than the high density projects in the high profile areas. We've been successful with that in Midtown Phoenix, South Mountain Corridor, North Central Phoenix, 12th Street and Bell area. It's areas that really other people overlook.
And those rents have stayed.
And the rents have stayed. So we looked at them the other day. One property has stayed flat since we've sold it. Another property where it was the only new property in probably 20 years at 12th Street and Bell, because we did a redevelopment, infill redevelopment, and brought new housing. That one has risen 4% per year. We did another one.
How much is that in dollars? $130?
Oh, about $115 a month. We did another one at 28th Street and Indian School, which was a redevelopment of a failed development. Cleaned up that area. Again, did it surface park, no structured parking. That one we looked at, we sold that 3 years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago. That one, the rents have risen 3%.
So the rents have been single digit versus some of the double digit we've seen over the last, I don't know, 5 years.
Correct.
Sure.
The double digit rents, when you see those in the news or what have you, those are typically rehab projects where they come in, do a big, yes.
Okay, all right, that's fair. And I get your business model. I'm there. I'm with you. All right. Thank you, Mayor. I think that's what I was interested more in discussing is what the final outcome will be. I agree. There's no issues with the landscaping. I know P&Z drilled you on that one. I know staff drilled you on that one. I know the amenities are there. You still have the pools, the gym, all those amenities. But again, because of the leveraging of the property, the area, things like that, you could still do a good project and still make, like I said, make it a very good project for the people that want to live there. Otherwise, they wouldn't want to live there if their amenities weren't there. But you're not competing with the high end.
You're absolutely right. We have to attract residents, and part of the way we do it is by building a quality project.
Okay.
It's a lesser location. It doesn't have structured parking, but we absolutely have to continue to bring residents in.
And I'm sure staff held you to feet on that stuff as well.
You have a very diligent staff, and they certainly work hard to make sure.
I know they are. I know they are. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Questions? Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, Council, do you have any additional questions for staff before we look at motions on this. Councilmember Huang.
Well, I don't have further question. I just like to make some comment. I think Councilmember McClellan make a very good, ask a very good question. That's so. What would be the appropriate project for this land? And so I try to put myself into a developer's shoes and position. So I'm thinking about commercial plaza, office building, industrial manufacturer, or shopping plaza, anything. And I just found out, well, maybe a housing project is appropriate for this land, or the developer, the landowner, will probably already doing something else already. So, well, don't get me wrong, I still don't like Charles. If I got any opportunity, I'm still going to give you a hard time. I still don't like the LG one, okay? But well, I think I think you made a very good argument and made a very strong case that this is appropriate. I'm not going to say it's the best project, but I think this is appropriate for that land. And it's 24 acres, and it's 16 units per acre, which is a little bit high, but it's acceptable to me. And I would like to recommend an approval for the project. Thank you.
So Council, let me again go back. Is there any additional questions for staff before we deliberate this? Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. For Micah Miranda, our economic development guru. First of all, Bill, congratulations for your hard work, and I commend you for that. 40 years, very determined, and this is where we are tonight, to trying to sort that out. Micah, talk to me just a minute about light industrial. What kind of vacancies do we have in the city of Chandler?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Rowe, our vacancy rates right now across the industrial product, it's higher than our average trend right now, but there's a reason for that, and it goes back to that old saying, product wins project for us. So we've had product come online to drive that vacancy higher. So I think citywide we're like 11% right now, which is still pretty low. So we're in that healthy range right now. That's even considering the leases we have that still haven't hit the market in terms of that vacancy rate number. So we're in about that 10% range right now.
So, okay, so another question here. Let's say somebody wanted to lease or purchase or rent or whatever you want to call it, industrial, light industrial here in Chandler. Would they pay less in Mesa in some areas, or are we very competitive? Are we looking for properties that might be a better deal for somebody trying to locate in Chandler when it comes to light industrial?
Through the mayor, council member, absolutely. Price is always a consideration, and I think citywide right now, really specifically with Air Park, we're looking at about $8.12 triple net for lease rates. So it's competitive. It's a good marketplace right now for that industrial space, just because of the interest in that market.
If this property, again, it's Bill's property, and Evergreen does commercial and they do residential and apartments, but if this property, if someone came to the city, our developer, and said, we want suites of light industrial, would that be it? Would you perceive that as a good fit?
Through the mayor, Councilman Rowe, that request would be consistent with a general plan in the Air Park area employment plan. So it would be something that staff would view favorably.
All right, that was my question. Thank you very much.
Mayor. So any other over here first? Okay, Councilmember.
I got a procedural question here for the city attorney, and obviously with your indulgence. Obviously this property is still in the county. If it's brought into the city, there may be tax repercussions. So, or maybe you could answer that question. I don't want to, I guess my point is, should we try to work on resolution 44 before we do 43? Because if we approve 43 and just hypothetically deny 44, this gentleman here may not want this ordinance to, he may not want to come to the city.
We don't want to be annexed if we can't do something with the property. To the earlier question, there's been an opportunity for
I got my
industrial for
answer.
some time. It just hasn't been a reality. And the city's frankly never sent anybody to us indicating that would be the case. If we can't do the project that we're looking for, we don't wish to annex in.
So then I'm looking at a procedure question here. We should do 44 first,
We can.
see if that passes or denied, and then we're done. If it's denied, we're done, because obviously I just heard you say you don't want to be annexed. Okay. So Mayor, with that, introduction of ordinance number 4947, resolution number 5417, area plan amendment, PLH 200-007, Evergreen Chandler. Recommend approval, resolution number 5417, an area plan amendment to Chandler Air Park area from commercial / office / business park to a high-density residential. Planned area development, PAD, PLH 20-006, Evergreen Chandler, approving ordinance number 4947, the rezoning from planned area development, PAD, to PAD amendment for multifamily. Whew, we're out of breath here. Preliminary development, PDP, approval, PDP for site layout and building design located north of northeast corner of Arizona Avenue and Germain Road.
So there's a motion to not go with what is written here, but to approve this project. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
So we have a motion and a second. So council, again, before we vote on this, the vote now is to approve this, where before a yes would have been to deny this. Comments? Councilmember, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a difficult one. As you through your presentation, there's a lot of explaining. This is so many items to weigh. Property rights, somebody that's assembled property, willing to do or wanting to have it developed, and his right to do so. Weighing that against our general plan, fitting in with the air park area plan. But to me, in the end, and it's a very compelling story you've told, and let me make one comment too on Evergreen. The development itself, sorry, taking deep breaths and I can barely breathe. The development itself, the architecture, the layout is phenomenal. I mean, this is exactly what we love to see in Chandler. Again, working with staff and all the amenities you've added. It's a good property. But in the end, unfortunately for me, it's just the location is just really putting me off with south of the 202, losing employment. I can appreciate all of everything else that was being discussed, and it makes it very difficult for me to lean that way. But to me, it's not good enough in order to get away from that employment. So I just wanted to explain my vote before we do that. So
Additional comments from council. Councilmember McClimans.
Yeah, so for me, this equally very difficult property based on the surrounding area. And for me, if the general plan alone was solely employment, it would have been a hard no from the beginning. But that's not the case. There is other potential uses without a general plan amendment. And there's apartments being built right across the street, apartments being built catty corner to it. I don't foresee this property as a Class A property, potentially light industrial, but nothing's come along. But I did want to share like a personal experience. I lived in Chandler 17 years. My daughter was first graduating class at Perry High School this year. She graduated with her bachelor's in nursing, was hired right after. And she went out to look for houses in Chandler, Queen Creek, Gilbert, 300,000 or less. And I got to tell you, there's nothing. Single income, there's nothing. And so from a workforce position, and you do hear this in the community, that is one of the driving forces that makes me interested in this project. It is a nice project, and it's a nice project in a difficult area. And so I'm inclined to support this project.
Mayor. Councilmember.
I like all of us up here, we've had discussions about what we do in our community. We've had great discussions. We alluded earlier. And I am conflicted. And I told this both to staff and I've told this both to the applicant. I'm conflicted here because, again, I do want to maintain the employment. I do want to, but I also look at what can we do to get that middle group of individuals that are working in our community. And like I indicated to you earlier, when during this COVID thing, and I use many of these companies, the only folks that went to work, everyone else was at home at their laptops and computers, was the assembly person, was the stockroom person, was the drivers. And most of those people, they want to live here too. But because of their wages, some of them can't live here. And I think that's unfair, in my personal opinion. So I am conflicted, as some of you are up here, about employment versus workforce housing. But in this case here, and you heard me, we heard the applicant say he's got a history of this, and the rents aren't driven up. They're pretty much staying stable because that's their business model. They want to stay in that market niche. I think this is a good use for this property. And I'm hoping that, you know, we just approved the property, Elliott Road, retail. We're taking down some retail to put apartments there. Why? To drive commerce, to drive businesses. We got the other one coming in next. The same arguments they're using: high capacity lane, or high capacity occupancy. They're tearing down employment, right, buildings, and putting apartments. It's the same thing we're doing here. This fits. It's only a mile away from downtown. It will help the Germain intersection, which we do have some retail there that is suffering, let's be honest. Before the pandemic hit, these are 400, almost 300 units. I think this will help drive some economic development in that area. So that's why I'm improving this. Again, I'm conflicted. I'm not being hypocritical here. But again, I have to look at this and say, what's the best use for this property today? And I think right now, we could wait 20 more years from now, but we'll maybe still be here. I don't know, Bill, God bless you. Maybe you will be here 20 years. I'm sure you will be. You're looking great shape. But I saw you here with the Adobe project. You must remember that in 2006. And I didn't think we'd get to see you again. But again, I'm interested in moving forward with this property. So that's why my motion. Thank you, Mayor.
So council, let me address this, is that I see a difference between, I appreciate you're holding on to this as you have, but I see this assembly as 3 years old, not 40 years old. And I see the marketing of this, if this has been in place for perhaps a year beyond that in terms of looking at this. So I still see this as we are struggling with apartments desiring to go in many, many places across our city, and many good places, and everyone, it's going to be a gut-wrenching decision of, is this appropriate, as opposed to, is this for jobs appropriate? And with the ones going in across the street, and we've approved that are being built, and we've approved 2 projects tonight, and there's one more to be looked at. I honestly, I think that I'm going to stick with this, looking at employment on this property and not additional housing. I've been standout on Arizona Avenue on the east side for as long as I've been on council and as mayor, to say I think the better use is transition and industrial on that spec. I think we have worked with staff and our planning and zoning to give staff direction and saying, this is where we're at. And yes, there's flexibility, but if this was any place else, I would be very compelled. But it is the location that makes me, I'm going to be voting no on this. For the same sake of employment, I do hold sacred, and there's vacant land now, and one of my former council members, Nora Ellen, said that land will be developed, and I understand your plight, sir. I'm not making light of that, and I appreciate that you have assembled this, but I like what you desire to put up, Evergreen there, but in terms of this location, I am going to stick with what the direction we have given to staff, the direction we've given to planning and zoning in terms of what we're looking for. And to be consistent, I'm going to be voting no on this project. So council, any additional comments before we vote on this? Seeing none. So to be clear, we're voting on, and just in reference to defer, we're voting on item number 44, which is to approve this. And as Councilmember Orlando read, and if this passes, we will then turn around and look at item number 43 in terms of the zoning change. That's, so everyone is clear on that, correct? So with item 44, we've had a motion, we had a second. Just want to make sure, City Attorney, this is correct.
Mayor, since it's on the same agenda, we can proceed accordingly.
Okay. Council, please vote. Again, a yes means we're approving the apartments as opposed to a denial, and a no means we are not.
Motion fails by lack of majority.
All right, thank you. And with that, we will be not voting on item number 43. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda, I'm going to defer to Councilmember Wong. You asked that item number 2 be brought to action. So if you would like to.
So are we going to let the state present or?
Yeah, go ahead. Turn your mic on, please. Why don't you make your questions first? I'm not sure we need a presentation. Let me see what Councilmember Wong, what's your wishes first here?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to deny item number 2.
To deny item number 2?
Yeah, to deny it. So, well, I do have my reason, and am I going to talk right now, or we are going to let the staff present first?
If I was going to let you talk, I thought you were first discussing a continuance, but you.
I think we should deny it. Even if we continue, they may. It doesn't look like the developer want to continue it. Right. If we deny it, then they may come back with another plan.
So is that an official motion?
Yes, that's an official motion.
All right.
Yep.
So there's a motion on the floor to deny item number 2. You can sit down, please. Is there a second on this motion?
Second.
So there is a motion and a second. I'm going to wait for Councilmember Vice Mayor Lopez. Yeah, because I actually was expecting you to ask for continuance.
Yes.
What you had previously gone to me.
Oh, Mayor, I'm sorry. Are you Mayor?
Yeah, so.
Go ahead.
Okay. As you can see, we just have a conversation that I'm in favor of the development, and right now most of the project are infill. And the previous one, number 44, that's 24 acres. And this one is only 6.5 acres. And they are going to put 293 units on it. That's 45 units per acre. I think that's really too extreme. Not that I don't like the project. I think they do have good design and very good project. The location was not right. It's on Chandler Boulevard and near Alma School. That's the major concern. 45 units per acre. We have item number 4. We did see resident express opposition just because it's 10 units per acre, and this one has more than 4 times. And we also just designed another one, 44. It's only 20 per acre. And now, if we are going to approve 45 units per acre, I don't think we send the right message to our public. So that was my main reason for the design. And also, it's in Chandler Boulevard. Chandler Boulevard, if we do a traffic study there, it's pretty heavy traffic already. Yeah. So that's my main reason.
All right. There is a motion and a second. Councilmember Orlando.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mr. Bull, it's good seeing you again, an old friend. course, been dealing with Brendan Ray. I need to talk to you about that later on. Just kidding. Just kidding, man, just kidding. You're a very good tutor, let's put it to a young man. Mayor, I had a frank conversation. You know, I've known Brendan many years, as many of you up here know. I appreciate his frankness. I appreciate his diligence. I appreciate enthusiasm for project and for his client. And the client, you have a great attorney here, by the way. I thank you, you know that already. But sometimes we just agree to disagree on this one. And you heard the conversation on Monday night, you heard the conversation tonight, where my thought process is on this. It's not so much I'm against this, the multifamily piece of this, because it does fit, as we talked about earlier in the last project, but it's the intensity. It's the 4 stories. It's the square foot, the high density issue of this whole area, which I know P&Z had similar issues, so it wasn't exactly a 7-0 vote either. So, but this is what we do here. We have to take a look at these issues. We look at them individually and from a holistic approach. So that's why I can't support this. And like I said, I had a good conversation with staff as well as Brenner Ray, and they knew my position on this. Nothing against the project. It's beautiful. I know P&Z did a lot of effort to redesigning it, but again, the intensity and the massiveness of this project in such a small area, and the 45 units per acre is just a little bit too much of a stretch for me. So that's why I'm not approving this. Thank you.
Before we vote. There's a
went out.
vote to deny this project on. If this
I
dies,
just
then
wanted
the-
to make one statement on that. So we gave the other applicant a ton of time and we come out guns blazing with the denial to present their project.
there was out of the gate a motion on this. So,
Yeah, we can vote on motion.
yeah. We're just voting on a motion.
Mayor, if you want a discussion, we could have one.
But there's called the question, you made the motion, you have to vote on it.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so
Procedurally, yeah, when there's a call to question, call to motion, we need to address that before going out.
call the question. To call the question, we'll vote.
All right. Councilmember Rowe.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to be sure that I'm listening right. Councilmember Wong's motion is about this item, number 2.
To deny it.
And it isn't about a procedural thing. It is about this item, to approve or not approve. Whatever our vote is, it is about this item. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, and if procedurally, if there is a no vote, if his motion does not pass, another motion is in order, correct?
That is correct, Mayor.
Correct.
Okay. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Can you, Brendan, you and I talked about, we just had a big meeting about sustainability and electric cars and things like that. One of the things I have a real problem with is the parking. One of the things we did recently is we changed our parking requirements to account for
Wasn't it a call to
autonomous.
question?
Yeah, it was a call to question. So
You had a call to question?
Yeah.
There is a call to question,
I don't-
so.
yeah.
I
We got a
believe,
second on?
because I
Procedurally,
believe,
I think.
Mayor, if there's someone that's called the question, then the vote should be taken unless that person withdraws their call for the question.
Yeah. Correct.
no,
You don't have
for a
to
call to
second.
question, that is just, you just vote on the item. So you just immediately do that. You don't vote on whether you should vote on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody second it?
Well,
There's
Elaine
there's
seconded.
no second on a call.
On the call.
Mayor,
you don't second.
you do not vote on the call of question. The call for the question means it is a request for the body to vote on the motion before them, which is to deny the project.
Okay. So, council, please vote. Again, a yes on this means we're denying, a no means that we are not
We are
denying
not
this.
moving it.
Motion fails by lack of majority.
Okay.
Okay.
So now, yes. Now we can open the discussion back up again. Correct.
So now it is appropriate to further discussion or make a motion.
So, go ahead. You want?
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. Brendan, so we talked a little bit about the parking. I have a real problem with the overflow parking or the discussion about the parking going out to the street. My challenge with this is that if the Safeway property were ever sold and people were still parking on the street or guests were coming and parking on the street, which happens with one of our local properties here downtown, that could cause an issue for both the owners and the apartment complex itself. Is there a way that we can stip that the parking has to fit within the confines and within the gates of the community? I think it's probably the most appropriate thing here. And then another question was about making sure that there were electric ports for vehicles for like Teslas and things like that. We're the third highest per capita of electric cars in the state, and that's going to a trend that will continue to grow. So just making sure that this is a sustainable project from that regard.
Through the mayor, Councilman Stewart, Brendan Ray, 702, before I respond, Brendan Ray, 1850 North Central Avenue, not 702 East Osborne, 1850 North Central, here on behalf of Wood Partners. Through the mayor, Councilman Stewart, with respect to your question about kind of overflow parking, this is something that we've had a lot of discussion with staff on, and you are correct. You and I have had a number of discussions with it as with others as well. And when we start to look at the parking for this development, and we look at the reduction that we're requesting, we are under normal, using the city's suburban parking criteria, this development would require 498 spaces. We are providing 484. Now, that 484 does include some that are on street. And the reason we have an ability to count the on-street parking before I even ever get over to the Safeway on the east side of Park Lane, before I ever get there, these are private streets, which is a little bit unique. Park Lane and Commonwealth adjacent to this side are private streets. And that goes back to when in the early 80s, this was planned to be a large mall, a 60-acre regional mall. And so, you know, with that in mind and that development, when the office went in, it was anticipated that office preceded what would have been a large retail development. And so because of that, there are private streets adjacent to our site. And so when we look at those, taking those off-site parking spaces, and you look at the reduction that we are requesting, it amounts to about 2.8%. That is in line in keeping with a number of multifamily developments that this council has approved, including one tonight earlier on the consent agenda. But as we look at it and we say, all right, Brennan, Wood Partners, what if we don't count your on-site parking or the off-street parking? Then we're at a 7.4% reduction, which again, as we look at it, and we submitted this to staff, it's contained in our development booklet. It was contained in the parking study that we submitted to staff and was reviewed by staff. That 7.4% reduction is in line with other reductions that this council has granted for other multifamily developments. And we specifically went out and looked at two of the other parking development, the other developments that have recently been approved. One, Steel Yard, which you're all very familiar with. The other one is the Met over by the mall. And as we looked at those developments, and those have similar reductions, right around the 6-7-ish% range in terms of reduction. And we went out and we did a parking study, and we looked at night. All right, because what's the question? What is there enough parking for the residents and for the guests and all of that? And what we found looking at those two other similarly situated developments in terms of reduction is that actually there was a parking surplus at night. That there was about 14 to 17% of spaces that were unoccupied at night at both of those developments. And so when we start to look at it and compare at it, obviously I can't, predict for the one-time event where maybe, 3 or 4 people are having 40th birthday parties and really want to live it up here. But we believe that based on the parking study, based on looking at existing developments, based on, if we look at, ITE criteria, that the reduction certainly is appropriate.
And we, at no time have we planned, I don't believe, and included in our parking calculations, going over and spilling over to Safeway and using some of that over there that used to be that Applebee's that's now a Starbucks and stuff like that. We are planning on containing it on site, and all of our resident parking is within the gates. We are providing a total of 52, if I remember right, guest parking spaces on our site. And again, it's only in those rare instances where we might have an overflow that we are anticipating that those parking spaces that are provided along Park Lane and along Commonwealth will be used. With respect to your second question in terms of charging vehicles, Wood Partners at most of their developments throughout the valley and have provided those charging stations. We included in the development booklet, which if approved by the council tonight as a condition of the ordinance, we have said in there, and I know staff well enough to know that they're going to keep us honest. But in that development booklet, it specifically says that we are going to provide charging stations. We don't have them designed, we don't have them located yet. That usually comes a little bit later as we're laying out the site and looking at utilities and where those go. But the plan is to provide a minimum of 4 of those charging stations, because we recognize that in this ever-evolving transportation world, that those are certainly important. And we believe that it will be important to the future residents as well to have that ability and access.
Thank you. Thank you. Kevin, do you have a second? On the charging stations, is that in the current, Mr. Ray said it was in the current program, or is that something you add later? Or how does that work? And then how does that work in the plan? Like, how do we check on that? And do we add, like, what's the right number? Can we help them with that on what the right number might be? I don't know if it's 4, if it's 8, or if it's 2. Is it something we can do?
Through the mayor, council, yeah, we could add it as a step to the PDP from a design standpoint. Ultimately, the number of those charging stations would be probably a negotiated number with the applicant, but it's easy to add that as a step to the PDP.
Okay, thank you.
And I have a question, and Susan, I don't know if you can answer this or Kevin, but it comes to staff. I'm sorry, staff question. The parking again. Shoot, sorry, Brendan. Sorry, like you down and up. But if I remember correctly, there are requirements in the parking that don't we have in somewhere in our ordinance? I thought that if they had a drop-off pickup location for Lyft, Uber, Waymo's my preferred, by the way. But anyway, if they have one of those on-prem, it also is allowed within our ordinance too that they can have a reduced number of parking spaces. Was that accounted for? Or am I misunderstanding what we passed on the ordinance for that?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Lopez. So yes, in the ordinance that is allowed to reduce the parking on site through a loading, a ride share space on that, but that was not calculated in their parking to reduce it. So they do provide for loading spaces, but they did not utilize that. So we can account for that additional spaces for Uber or pickup as well.
And how much was that? What the reduction? Was it a percentage or was it a number? I just don't remember the detail on it.
Through the mayor, I'm sorry, I don't remember if there's a percentage or not of that.
10%, isn't it?
Was it?
In terms of Mayor, Vice Mayor Lopez, in terms of reduction, we are requesting again that 484 be provided, which is a reduction really of 14 parking spaces, is what it amounts to.
Correct, but when I'm saying, just because I recall that we passed an ordinance that if you had a loading unloading for rideshare, thank you for saying the rideshare, I was trying to think, if you had that as part of your project, if I recalled correctly, then you were able to reduce your, and I just didn't know if that was for commercial and retail or if that was for residential also. But if you have a load unloading zone, loading unloading rideshare zone, then we did allow for a 10% reduction. So that would actually account for 40 spaces. So they would put them under the allotment immediately anyway. Okay. So, all right. So, okay. Thank you. I think you answered my own question.
Oh, if I need to, I was going to say I can get the magic eye in the sky to float on my iPad here. You won't be able to see it, but we are providing a ride sharing location. Again, it's on the site plan. We've identified where that location is.
Was it 1 or 2?
It's really an area where we're providing that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Stewart.
Mayor, just to be clear with council, I'd like to add a step that those electronic charging stations are added to the PD or to the overall plan, that Kevin can add those. So I don't know if everybody's okay with that, but I'd like to get that added.
I think when we make a motion, you can certainly indicate that as far as you would like to make a motion.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments?
Want to make one? So I'll make a comment and then a motion.
Vice Mayor.
So as we had the previous discussion with the multifamily on a major transit corridor, changing of zoning from commercial to residential. Again, that was a hard one. This one was also a little difficult for me. Again, employment to us is king, especially since we're continuing to grow and bring in great employment opportunities. But this to me is one of those where it is not as difficult of a decision because it checks a little bit more boxes for me personally when it comes to that conversion. There is that existing retail that needs the buffer, but the big one for me too is it's north of the 202. We need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on our southern Chandler area plan, and then it's just so that's why I think this is a case by case, but we need to look in the council, and it's farther from the airport. It's another one, but for the council, that's why these cases do come before us, and with staff, with the staff recommendations, planning and zoning, serving on the airport commission, we do listen to them, and it does provide us a good background on what questions to ask, what to consider when considering these one-off cases and specific cases. So for that reason, it may seem contradictory, but again, the location is very different to me, and the purpose behind this location, the density, it doesn't bother me. I think that it's something that is needed in the area to truly help a lot of the retail. So for that reason, I am going to move for the approval of the introduction of ordinance number 4941, PLH 20-0013, Alta Chandler at the park.
Would you be amenable to the stip that Councilmember Stewart asked?
With the addition, the stipulation that there be, I'll say minimum of 2, or should we want to put a number?
We'd like staff to do the study on what the appropriate amount's going to be.
There
might be a 0.5% in the entire city, but just creating some sustainability options.
Half of the staff and
4 or 8 or whatever it may be, but
have the staff and the applicant work together on adding in some charging stations.
All right. Is that motion
specific enough?
City Attorney?
Yes, Mayor, as I understand it, the motion is to approve both the ordinance and the preliminary development plan with the added stipulation that staff work with the developer to determine an appropriate number of electric charging stations for parking.
So there's a motion. Is there a second? So we have a motion and a second. Councilmember Wong, you had a question or comment?
I would like to amend the motion. I would like to amend the motion. Adding beside Vice Mayor's motion, I would like to amend the motion that to including a condition that the developer make it under 30 units per acre.
So this would have to be agreed by the motion maker or the second, is that
No,
correct?
that's
City
not,
Attorney?
no.
It would be.
Mayor, if I may, I think Councilmember Wong is moving to amend the motion
Okay.
to reduce the density to 30, below 30 units per acre. So a second would be appropriate, and if there is a second, then you'd vote on that amendment, then the first.
All right, I heard a second from, no. Is there a second on that amendment by Councilmember Huang? Seeing none, motion fails.
Yeah.
All right. Any additional comments, council, before we vote on this? Seeing none, council, please vote.
Motion carries by majority.
All right. Thank you, council. Next on our agenda is we do have council, a public hearing, and city manager.
Mayor, you want to open the public hearing and call for staff presentation?
Yes, I would like to.
All right.
I'd like to open our
All
public
right.
hearing
Well,
and call for staff to make a presentation. It's being a long night already, isn't it? Ryan.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. All right, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm happy to be here tonight to share the progress we've made over the last year in assisting Chandler residents to improve their level of independence and quality of life through housing stability and neighborhood revitalization efforts. Each year, the city is required to submit a CAPER, or a Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. This report provides the outcomes achieved with federal community development block grant and home investment partnerships funds. While this is a required report, it also gives us an opportunity to communicate the variety of housing and support services we offer to Chandler residents. It allows us to demonstrate how we leverage federal funds with local general funds to increase our capacity to serve Chandler residents. It allows us to evaluate our progress towards goals and objectives proposed in our 5-year consolidated plan, and it allows us to share our successes in facilitating housing stability and neighborhood revitalization in Chandler. I'd like to briefly share a couple of highlights from the report with you. In the area of housing stability, this year we were able to assist 10 low and moderate income individuals stay in their homes because of emergency home repairs and minor housing rehabilitation. We were also able to assist 5 low and moderate income individuals become first-time home buyers by purchasing homes that were acquired and then rehabilitated through our Newtown Community Land Trust program. And finally, 40 households experiencing homelessness moved into housing through our tenant-based rental assistance program. Further, residents utilizing public housing and housing choice, or Section 8 vouchers, have the opportunity to participate in our family self-sufficiency program, which helps them save money towards the purchase of their own home. This past year, 6 participants were able to purchase their own homes, and 77 additional participants continue to save for that future purchase. CDBG, as you know, also supports a variety of public services which are directly administered to Chandler residents. Through these programs, 367 children residing in our public housing were able to participate in programs like Read to Succeed. 10 residents received fair housing education, which is designed to prevent housing discrimination. 171 individuals received homeless outreach services right here in Chandler. 94 individuals received emergency shelter or transitional housing, and 850 individuals received housing stability case management services to help them maintain their housing. Finally, I'd like to share a little bit about our success in supporting neighborhood revitalization efforts. Last fiscal year, we continued to improve neighborhoods through code enforcement activities in CDBG eligible areas. Our CDBG funds supported 1.5 full-time positions, and those positions were able to conduct over 18,000 property inspections, resulting in over 1,000 violations and 747 notices. And through that process, 5 households were also referred to other city departments to receive assistance. That was obviously a very brief summary of some of the highlights of our work in the last year, but you can find the full CAPER report as well as an executive summary online at chandleraz.gov/plans and reports under the CAPER section. The public comment period began on October 27th and it ends on Tuesday, November 10th. The public comments will be included in the final report that will come before you on December 10th. Once we obtain approval, we will be submitting this report to HUD this year. Because of the pandemic, we have a little bit of a delayed deadline of December 27th. So I know that was quick, but thank you for your attention, and I would any questions you may have.
Council, any discussion or questions? Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you for the presentation. Really proud of what you guys are doing. Thanks for all the great work.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no additional discussion from council, is there any discussion from our audience? Seeing none, I'd like to close our public hearing. Council, next, we have no unscheduled public appearances tonight?
Mayor, I do not have any cards.
All right, thank you. Next on our agenda then, council, is comments, which I will start. Got three things to just bring before you all tonight. First is our I Choose Chandler PPE kits. Earlier this week, I had the opportunity to join our economic team and the Chandler Chamber to distribute the first batch of free PPE kits to approved businesses at the Chandler Fashion Center. We distributed kits to many, many businesses throughout the day, and it was a great opportunity to get to chat with these businesses and learn more about their needs right now. Council, I can say that every single business that came forth and received this package of material from us was extremely appreciative, both of the chamber and of the city and our partnership to do the same. So we do want to say that if you are interested and you qualify for a free PPE kit, you can visit the link on the screen. And council, I would recommend that you each take an opportunity, if your schedule prevails, to do the same. You'll find this a heartwarming morning to go work with our small businesses and help them in this regard. Secondly, I do want to talk about a new program that we're bringing forth called Civic. I believe civic engagement is vital to properly address the needs and future of our community. So my newest initiative, Civic, will help residents better engage with our city. Civic is an interactive 10-session program providing Chandler residents with behind-the-scenes look at city services. This free program will launch on January 2021, and each session, participants will meet with city leaders, tour facilities that keep our city running, participate in interactive sessions, and learn how to stay engaged with the city and in our community. And just as we recently motivated 35 people to participate in our bond election, this will further engage citizens in our community. And Josh Wright, that was a great picture of you on the piece there. That by itself would make me want to apply. You can learn more about this and apply online. And lastly, I do want to talk about voter turnout. As of 11/5 at 12:53 a.m., voter turnout was at 73.43% with 123,796 Chandler voters casting ballots out of a voter population of 168,598. So a tremendous response from our community, as we're seeing around the state and the nation, of people being engaged in politics. And I, regardless of who people voted for, I applaud people's taking the time and energy to exercise their civic right, their duty. Currently, we also we had an issue with Southwest Gas, the franchise question. It's passing for the franchise 65,095, and against the franchise 34,680. So I don't know the new results that were released as of 7 o'clock tonight. So certainly there's a new batch of results, I believe, that were also released. And finally, I do want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. This is our last meeting before the Thanksgiving holiday. We have so much to be grateful for our community, and I'm grateful to each of you, council members, for your work in taking this job seriously, to our city staff, and to all who make Chandler a great place to live, work, and play. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. It is moving into the holidays. I can't believe it. And we will be doing some Christmas shopping soon, which is why I need to tell you about the Chandler Museum store grand opening. Celebrate the Chandler Museum store opening by shopping with us this week. You'll find one-of-a-kind gift items, including locally made pieces that capture the culture, history, and the art of our wonderful city of Chandler. There are giveaways and deals each week through Saturday, and on November 29th, just in time for holiday shopping, we're celebrating Museum Store Sunday. Did we make that up? Because that's pretty unique. A worldwide initiative to encourage communities to be a patron of their local museum stores. The museum store is located in the lobby of the Chandler Museum, and you can learn more about that on the Chandler website. And I wanted to, last I heard, I think there was a big election on Tuesday, and some people are buzzing around about it. And there's Sharpie Gate, there's all kinds of things going on. But I wanted to let you know that I called up one of our county supervisors today. We had a nice discussion about what was going on with our particular election. And I wanted to like maybe settle some of my fears, and I think maybe some other folks' fears, and that we he said that the ballot counting process is going exactly as planned. The challenge is that a lot of folks waited till the last minute to take those green ballots, and they took them to the polls. Like lots of people, I was out at the polls on Tuesday, were walking up with their ballots. The thing is that those ballots have to be counted, but they first have to check the signature. And there are tons of ballots, a lot more than 2 years ago, to check. And so that's what's putting them behind. 150,000 more drop tonight. I'm expecting another 150,000 to drop tomorrow. But he said that the Sharpie issue is not an issue with these new machines. Are actually better because the gel ink was actually smudging a little bit, but the actual Sharpies were better because they dried faster. So they have brand new machines. All the county supervisors bought brand new machines. So I guess the takeaway, or the big takeaway from all this, is that everything's fine and it's going as planned. And there's nothing necessarily nefarious going on with Sharpies or anything like that. We just got to let the process work. And if there's an overcount, or if there's other things like that we might have questions about, we can deal with that later. But right now we'll get the ballots through and we'll move forward. Councilmember McClymans.
That you're looking very Sharpie tonight. Councilmember McClymans.
Thank you, Mayor. There's only 57 days left until 2021, FYI. And thank you, everybody that stayed to listen to our wonderful announcements. The Chandler Fire Department is once again collecting toys to help brighten the holiday season for Chandler children who might otherwise go without this year. The annual toy drive will be held at Chandler Fashion Center from 2 to 8 p.m. Saturday, December 5th. The highlight of the event will be the Enchanted Fire Village, a special holiday wonderland built by the Chandler firefighters with decorated fire trucks. For those who cannot attend the December 5th event at the mall, toy or gift card donations may be dropped off or mailed to the Chandler Fire headquarters starting November 9th through December 11th. You can learn more on our website. That's all I have. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Along with Thanksgiving coming this month, Veterans Day is also coming. So next week, Chandler City offices will be closed on Wednesday, November 11th in observation of Veterans Day. I want to thank all of our veterans for their service and brothers and sisters that served in arms and sacrificed for our country and freedoms. In honor of Veterans Day, the city's diversity office, in partnership with the Chandler Museum, has created the first annual Chandler Veterans Path of Honor that will be available for the public to experience starting Friday, November 6th. Residents are invited to take a leisurely walk along the Path of Honor at Veterans Oasis Park. Large signs featuring nearly 20 veterans will be on display and placed along the trail through the end of November. So please come out and support our veterans and give thank you to your fellow veteran out there. You can go to the website, shows up, to learn more. Thank you. We got a website this time.
Councilmember Wong.
So I have been kept saying that winter is coming, so it finally is here. So happy Thanksgiving. And this is holiday. We are going to have a holiday season. Chandler's nonprofit organization has a rich tradition of holiday giving through annual community toy drives, as Councilmember McClymans said, and holiday meals, food banks, and gift sharing. COVID-19's impacts have increased the need for donations and support among Chandler's vulnerable families. So we are encouraging residents who are able and willing to donate time, items, or dollars to support the community in whatever way they can. So we have compiled a list of ways to give this season on our website. Please check the screen. Second thing I would like to say, I have been in the United States for more than 28 years, experienced 7 presidential elections. We have a record high voter turnout this time. And also, it's also probably the most ugly election I have ever seen. So many rumors, so many violence. But you know what? Please have a confidence on our nation, have confidence on our poll workers, have confidence on the people who work behind the scene. And I believe they are diligent, they are doing their job. So please don't listen to any rumor and don't listen to anything that's unreasonable. Use your good judgment and let's come down and enjoy our life here in this country, enjoy our harmony society, and start to love each other, even if you're supporting different people. Thank you.
Councilmember Rowe. Thank you to all the wonderful staff that is sitting here late into the evening. I will just try and make my remarks short. I will tell you this morning, I was honored to participate in a grand opening at the new Aldi shop on Queen Creek and Alma School Road, northwest corner, along with the mayor and several other council people. Terry Kimball and the Chamber of Commerce were there and helped Aldi launch. I don't know if you know what that is. My wife knew what it was. She called me and said, get avocados. They're 25 cents a piece. So anyway, it's a very neat little new retail place, and I hope people will check that out. And so the other, and then my scripted comments here. Talking about holiday giving, I wanted to give a shout out to Team Chandler for their efforts in giving back this season so far. And it is the season, and if you're not ready, you better get ready. And so in October, nearly $500 was raised and donated to the Acts of Kindness program, which supports a variety of human service programs that provide basic needs such as food, shelter, clothing, medical services, transportation, and utility bill assistance to low-income Chandler residents. Also, Team Chandler participated in Ascend's Dress the Turkey Fund Drive. City employees donated 74 turkeys and 2,000 pounds and counting of canned goods and non-perishable items. Thank you to our wonderful employees, those that are here tonight, those that are working through incredible hours. When you don't think we care, I care. I'm sorry that you're having to work all night, but thank you for helping us keep the lights on. And have a great holiday, and thank you for going above and beyond to support our community. Happy holidays.
Councilmember Orlando.
Thank you, Mayor. As last Monday, we approved a resolution for Small Business Saturday. Actually, every day should be small business, shopping at local small business. So although we do designate one day a year, it's important for that, not only for obviously the small business and their survival, but also for our economy. We talk about police, fire, all the folks out here. Someone has to help pay for their salaries to make this city, continue making this community a great community. But for every $100 spent in a locally owned business, an average of $43 remains in our economy, whereas only $13 remains in our economy when spent on a non-locally owned small business. So don't go to Mesa, don't go to Gilbert, stay in Chandler, and let's keep this city thriving. Sorry, Gilbert and Mesa. I'm sure they're saying the same thing about us. Don't go to Chandler. Don't go to, but we're good. Thanks.
I have seen Gilbert's city manager eating downtown Chandler quite a few times. So
he's a smart man.
He's a smart man. City manager.
Just for the record, your city manager never eats in Gilbert. Only kidding. I have nothing else, Mayor.
All right, Council, thank you. You know, tonight we had some 4-3 vote. We had a 5-2 vote, and I appreciate that we are individuals. We will vote our heart through our eyes, but we'll come back and work together and to make sure that Chandler is the best city that we know possible. So I thank you for all your work here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor.